Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima. Welcome back to Blue Boards. This time we're going to be checking out Ganz, Schön, Clever, also known as That's Pretty Clever. But honestly, I kind of hate that English name because it sounds so patronizing. At least in the original German name, you can be like, oh, it's just some weird sort of phrasing going on. I like it, and honestly, it's a bit more memorable as Ganz, Schön, Clever than That's Pretty Clever. I'm also going to try and avoid using the word clever as much as possible in this video. I'm not going to succeed. I apologize ahead of time. So, this is a game that's really quite simple on the surface. It's all about taking these dice, these 6 simple, actually pretty nice dice, and rolling them and filling them in on your very detailed score sheet down here and scoring as many points as possible at the end of 4, 5, or 6 rounds, depending on how many people you've played with. But due to the fact that COVID cases have basically skyrocketed here in this state, and my usual gaming group isn't meeting up well, at all, really. I was going to say as much as usual, but no, we're just not meeting up at all. I've basically been playing this solo the entire time, although it doesn't really look like it, admittedly. You do get a lot of sheets in the box, but for every game that you want to play, you're going to be losing one of them. I really would have appreciated something like one of my favorite roll and ride games, which I can't actually grab right now because I have VR controllers on top of it, Super Skill Pinball, where it just has 4 erasable sheets. I would have loved to see that for Ganz, Schön, Clever, but there you go. So, the basic game is actually really simple to understand, so I'm just going to give you a quick run through of the rules real fast, because admittedly, the manual does explain it, but it's a little bit too wordy, and I feel like it could have gotten away with an easy 5-minute video is easier than reading through this manual and trying to make sense of it. So let's do that. Let's make that 5-minute video. So you take your 6 dice here, and you roll them. And then it's easier to arrange them by number like this, for example. Now, please excuse the fact that I'm not going to actually be writing on the sheet, because I want to save the sheets as much as possible for when I can actually start playing this multiplayer again. So, we have 6 dice here, and they're all differently colored, so that means they all do different things. So I'll just give you some examples right off the bat, going from left to right, because why not? With the yellow dice, you can fill in any number that's there on the grid. You just cross out the number. So for example, there's a 2 there and a 2 there. I can get rid of either of them, and if you fill in rows, you get bonuses. If you fill in columns, you get points, and if you fill in the diagonal column, you'll get a special ability. With the green, you can fill in the leftmost option in the row, and it works the same way for the rest of them that hasn't been filled in yet. In the case of the green, it has to be, in this case, higher than or equal to 1, but as you fill in, the number that you need to fill in the next one gets higher and higher, but the score that you get at the end of the game for this field also goes higher and higher the longer that you go along. The orange is a little different. You fill in the number with the number on the face of the die. So for example, this would be a 6. And as you go along, you'll be unlocking more bonuses, and you can choose to you might as well. You double and triple what the value of the dice face is, and the total score is simply the numbers that you have written down along there. Somewhat similar with the purple, same kind of concept. You write down the number that's listed there, but the number that comes next has to be higher than the one before it, except if it's a 6, in which case you can write any number whatsoever. So it makes it harder to get along that line, but in exchange you might notice there are more bonuses along the bottom. We'll get to what they do in a bit. The blue die is arguably the most complicated, but it's also not too bad in the grand scheme of things. So you take the value of the white die and you add it together, and this will give you a number, and you can choose to cross out that number in that space. So in that case, the 4 and the 5 adds up to 9, I'd be able to cross out the 9. The white dice is also unique in that it's wild, so you can use it to fill in anything that you're capable of. So in yellow, it would cross out any of the 5s. In green, it would go into the next slot, which would be fine in this case because it's only a 1. For the orange and the purple, it would be a 5, so it would just be a 5 in the orange, and if it was higher than the previous number, you'd be able to write it in there as well. And of course, you can combine that with the blue to make a number and cross that out there. So you might think, great, just roll high numbers and that will work out for you all the time. Not so much, because this game does a kind of unique thing that very cleverly limits your choices. If you pick, let's say, the number 5 die and use it, let's just say, in the orange slot, everything that is below the 5 goes onto the silver platter. and you can't use them on your turn. So as a result, you need to be very careful about what numbers and what dice you end up picking over the course of the game, because you have a very limited action economy. You have 3 rolls total over the course of a round, and if you're playing by yourself, it's 6 rounds, 2 players are also 6 rounds, 5 is 3 rounds, and 4 players is 4 rounds. So as you're going on, you need to make some very careful decisions, like, do I want to take advantage of the action economy? Do I want to be bustling up my points? Do I want to be doing something in between, and is it going to screw me over with the rolls? Because once you've picked something and added stuff to the silver platter in order to make up for it, you take what's there and you re-roll it. And you now have to make use of what's there. And you do the same thing again. You pick something else, you throw that away, and you roll this one again. And now, it actually creates a really interesting dynamic, because early on you want to be going for action economy, but later on you're actually okay with throwing away dice, because it means that you can make use of a higher value die without losing as much, and it creates this interesting little game in your head. And it keeps things going throughout the game, and it also makes things interesting because once you've played your 3 dice, every other player in the game gets to use what's called the passive dice, and they can choose any one of the die that you left behind on the silver platter as an option to put down on their score sheet. So you might be leaving someone a really nice scoring opportunity if you're not careful. And it does create some really interesting situations. And notably, if you're playing solo, excuse me for bumping the camera there, notably if you're playing solo, you actually play the role of the passive player. So you just roll the dice, pick the 3 highest dice and put them on the silver platter, and then your choice is from the 3 lowest dice. So that actually creates some really interesting psychology going on as well, because you might think, do I want to use this dice now, or do I want to hope for something on the silver platter later? Oh, well, these aren't actually the ones that go on the silver platter. You actually put the lowest value dice on the silver platter and the highest ones stay out of play. So it actually creates some really interesting decisions to be made, but it's also doubled over with the bonuses, because if you fill in a row, like let's say for example I filled in 2, 3, 4 here, I'd get a free 5 on the orange row. If I filled in the 4th box on the purple row, I'd get a free blue. And if I filled in, let's say, this 5th space here on the orange row, I would get a free yellow. I'd be able to cross out any yellow that I wanted. And this is where the game gets you to thinking, what can I do to maximize my action economy? Because you only have 18 rolls, right? There are way more than 18 spaces in this game. So you need to be maximizing your action economy by planning your actions around being able to fill in as many of these bonuses as possible. And admittedly, one of the most satisfying things in the world is to go, okay, I just filled in this row here. So I managed to get myself a free blue bonus, which I'm going to turn into a 4 that I used to fill in to get the 5, which I used to fill in to get myself a free yellow. Just chaining bonuses like that off each other is one of the most satisfying things in this game. And it is admittedly, it makes you feel really smart, very cleverly avoided the word there, to actually make this sort of thing happen. Especially when you're at the whims of these 6 dice, and you're at the whims of not being able to take the high scorers without sacrificing low scorers. And every single game is different, because you might think, okay, I'm willing to throw away the yellows because I'm actually doing really well in the yellow set of spaces right now in order to take a high wild die or something along those lines. And then in your next game, it might be the exact opposite. You might be doing really well in blue and green, but not in orange or purple, or some other combination. And it really keeps you thinking about that. But what's even better is the way the game handles scoring. So you do get a total score across all of these, right? So you do get, like, say, you fill in 20 here, you fill in 7 on the blue spaces, you fill in 5 in the green spaces, and you get a bunch of points from having high rolls there, and it gets you about 140 something, right? But the way you really want to score highly in this game is by getting foxes. And you've got a fox on yellow, blue, green, orange, and purple. So there's a fox to be earned in all of them. However, foxes are the total of your lowest scoring field. So if you got like 40, 40, 40, 40, and then 10, it doesn't matter how many foxes you got, you're only going to be scoring 10 off each of them. But if you manage to keep everything relatively balanced, those foxes will make you bank. And as a result, it keeps the game even more interesting because you want to be balancing all 5 of these. You want to be making interesting use of your action economy. You want to be making interesting use of throwing away certain dice in order to use certain higher scoring dice, and it all works really well together. And on top of that, just to add a little bit more extra thinky power into it, you've got unique power-ups that you can earn. Dice rerolls, which let you just re-roll the dice that you've got available to you, and +1, which let you take a dice that's currently out and use it again. So if you're the active player and you've used, like, let's say these 3 dice, you could use a +1 power in order to actually use the wild dice again and get yourself another 6 somewhere, which could be incredibly useful when deployed at the right time. But if you're a passive player and the active player ended up rolling a 6 in a color that you really need to get on your board, you can actually choose to use a dice off of the one that he's already used on one of his score sheets, instead of only being limited to the 3 that have ended up on the platter, for example, right? So if he rolls really well, suddenly that's a benefit to you. This overall combination of just dice rolling, using power-ups, building combos, and balancing your entire score sheet works really well together. They also give you a couple of neat benefits on top of that. So at round 1, you get a free reroll. Round 2, you get a free +1. Round 3, you get another free reroll. And round 4, you get to fill in any space for free at the highest possible value. So you'd get to fill in like a 6 on a purple, or just a green slot, or finish off that row or that column that you were really working towards. So they give you just a little bit, but it's usually enough to encourage some really good strategy. Almost use that word again. And so as a result, it's immensely satisfying to play. However, do you want to know how much more satisfying it is to play? You can go try this for yourself for free, the solo variant at the very least, because there is a free web app, and I will give you a little bit of a look behind the scenes right now to show you just what I mean. If I just lift this up and pan over to the tablet here, wow, the exposure is really bad there. There we go. Thank you very much, auto exposure. So as you can see here, this is a free browser version of Ganz, Schön, Clever. You can just roll the dice, pick your value. I'm going to go with that 2. It rolls the dice for you again. You pick the 3, rolls them again. You pick the 6 because you don't have to worry about the other dice anymore. And then it automatically rolls the dice for you and lets you be the passive player. Guess I'll take that 11 so I can work towards that free 6. And then you move on. It's round 2. They give you the bonus. And that's it. It's seriously really simple to play the game this way. I played this game on my phone 20 times in one night just because of how smooth this is. And it's a browser app. It's entirely free. Like, there's the web address for you. Focus. Oh, never mind. I'll put it as a link in the description. It's not only a web app, but it works great on phones. I had an absolutely fantastic time playing this on my phone, which I'm actually holding in my hand right now to show you this, because it's just so smooth. Games are over in like 5 to 10 minutes, and you don't even have to use the sheets that they give you in the box. Although that kind of raises a question, doesn't it? Because you think to yourself, why would I play the physical version if the web app is just so much more convenient and doesn't use the sheets? There is also a native mobile phone app, but it actually costs like $1.50. So I was actually kind of surprised to find out that that web browser version is entirely free. After having found that web browser version, I never felt the need to get this out. If I was playing this with some friends, absolutely, we'd all roll some dice, mark in the sheets and have some fun, but why drop the longevity of my physical game when I've got a perfectly capable web version of the game right there? And not only that, I can take it with me on my phone and not have to bring along this box, which admittedly is quite small. It has all the space it needs, because the score sheet is big enough to do the job, but small enough to be reasonable. Everything else fits there just fine, and having the physical representation of the silver platter is quite useful when you're trying to play solo and you're trying to use that weird tiebreaker rule, where it's like, oh, the closest one to the silver platter is the one that goes on the silver platter. It's weird, but okay. At that point, I just think to myself, do you really need the physical version of this game when there's a free digital version? And I'll just say that I've never felt the need to pull this out of the box while I've been playing the digital version. It's still a really good game. I do enjoy playing it. I just find myself playing the single solo version all the time, and considering that I haven't been able to actually play this with my friends yet, it's not so much I wasted my money, it's just kind of waiting for the opportunity to actually be useful. One other thing I will say though, if you've been watching my opinions on board games long enough, you'll know that I kind of hate games that work around score attacking, where you just try and get the highest score possible. But thankfully this game does just enough in order to be like, oh, there's actually something to it here, because this game's hard. I've actually had a lot of trouble getting a reasonable score on this game, and anything under the 140 is like try harder, you fail, but then you've got like a little star rank saying how well that you did there. And this isn't the sort of game where you can figure it out in a few games and then just win. No, the highest score I've gotten is 250, flat. So I've only managed to get 3 stars so far, so there's still a fair amount of working into getting towards You're So Clever, which is 280 or higher. Although you can absolutely get over 300 in this game if you're rolling well enough and strategizing well enough. What's strategizing mean? I don't know, brain. But look, I really do like this game. The dice rolling mechanics are clever. The way it encourages you to balance all your scoring among all the boards. The way that it encourages you to work for action economy first and then score second is really clever. But at the same time, there it is. I knew I was going to do it without realizing it. I say that, but as editing this, I've already caught myself saying it twice without realizing it, so I'm just a big ding-dong. But the way that it encourages you to work with the limited action economy you've got, balancing between choosing dice to sacrifice and using those high numbers works really well with each other. Chaining combos by filling in columns and rows and using that to fill in more spaces which fill in more columns and rows. Deciding when to use those rerolls and those +1s is a really neat little thing. And despite the fact that the game is very random, of course, thanks to the fact of the dice, you've got so much mitigation, so much combo potential, and so much balancing to do that it never felt like a detriment to the game itself. It's really good. I'm more than happy to recommend it. At the same time, though, if you've got that digital app, the game is suddenly so much smoother that you find yourself just playing this version endlessly and not really worrying about actually playing the physical version, which is a damn shame because it's a good game, but at the same time, it just makes me a little bit disappointed that I never actually got around to using the physical version of this as much. This game also has 2 sequels, Clever Cubed and Twice as Clever, other way around if you want the actual order they released in, that change up the way the dice mechanics work and change up the way the score sheets are. And there's also a set of like challenge score sheets for this, which massively change up the way you score and therefore give you just that little bit more of a just way to play around with such a simple system. And yeah, I really like it. I'm really happy to recommend it. And the sort of double-edged sword about recommending it is, it's got a really nice digital version, but you might end up playing the digital version so much that you don't end up spending money on the physical version. So, highly recommended. Go play the digital version, and if you like it, keep playing the digital version, but buy a physical copy of this for when you manage to have friends over or something, because it really is good. It's a real big step up from games like Yahtzee. It makes me feel smart playing it, making these little combos work and getting those really high points. And it's just good. It's just really good. This has been Blue Maxima. I'll see you all next time.